you do not have all the answers right now, and you don't need to have all of the answers. You just need to find the courage to take the next step in the right direction, an intentional direction that you want to take, not that society is telling you, not that your mother or your father is telling you that you should or shouldn't do. Like, no, what do you want to do? Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Starting Over with Shannon. Today on the podcast, we welcome Tom Myers. Now, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. When I came across Tom and his work, I was immediately like, yes, this is exactly what I need. I think this is exactly what so many of us need, in fact. And the topic we're going to be focusing on is that of purpose and meaning in life, and understanding how we can use our strengths, or what Tom will go on to explain as our native genius, to live our best lives, essentially, and find what is right for us. So Tom spent his early professional career as a ski racing coach, a fitness trainer, an entrepreneur. He then became an economic development official in state government, followed by 21 years in academia as a professor, teaching many courses, but one of his favorite, which was purpose, meaning, and happiness, something that we're going to speak about quite a lot on the episode today. Tom, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Shannon. Pleasure to be here and excited to talk to you.
I want to start with what is, I think, a common question and a common, let's say, experience that many of us have, where we don't quite feel like we're in the right thing for us. We're not in the right space. Somehow we're feeling stuck, but we're not sure of the next step to take in life, whether that be in our relationships or in our careers. But we have this lingering feeling that something has got to change. Can you tell us first a time when you have had that in your life?
Yeah, I think there are a number of different vocations, jobs I've had, or even relationships where it just didn't feel right. And as we say, you're going through the motions. And sometimes it's to pay the bills, it's sometimes be out of convenience, but you just know you're not in the right place. And everything, I would say everything, but more often than not, it seems like not drudgery, but it seems like you're going against the current. And while you're trying so hard and thinking this is the right thing, cognitively, we're thinking this is what I should be doing, but our heart is telling us it's not. But we, again, stick with it, stay with it. And I think it's really important to understand that what we talked earlier, it's a kind of that native natural genius, is like we're imbued with this incredible level of talent and strengths and interests and our personalities. And really what's important is to align that with our meaning and purpose. And you just feel, and it is a feeling thing, an emotional thing, to emote this sense of you're in the right place and you're going in the right direction. And intuitively, we know we're kind of not wrong direction, but it's just not specifically and perfectly aligned with our mission and purpose. There are many examples of being in a job, let's say, that is not aligned with personally my strengths, my interest, but it's paying the bills. And it's really interesting in life is to go through so many of these experiences, and you kind of have to. You have to have a reference point of being in different roles. Of course, when you're starting young and out of school and you're looking at different jobs, well, I'll try this, I'll try that. Well, this is interesting. And you kind of start to follow these paths, and then you begin to understand, oh, this isn't really me. This isn't really my job. This is not really what my interest is. But you go with it. And you have to learn, like, this is not what I want to do. I want to shift and again, align with my emotions and my feelings and my interests. So I think there are many times we're in these wrong. And unfortunately, it's a sad state when, people you have to pay bills. You have to get into a role, and sometimes you need to, sometimes stick with it. Sorry.
Yeah, and it's finding the balance also, because I think, sometimes you do need to be grounded and practical and do something to make ends meet that's appropriate. And then sometimes you need to know when you can actually dare to take a chance and a leap and do what you feel like you're being called to do, in the trust that will pay off for you. And I think so many of us don't make that leap. And our fears are what limit us from taking the steps necessary to change our life. Have you had a moment, Tom, like for you, whether that be in your career or even in relationships, where you have felt stuck and like you don't know what the next step is, but you've had somehow little signs or a quiet knowing or something that has caused you to change your life?
Yeah, I think probably being in academia for, as you said in the intro, 21 years. And I wouldn't say I was stuck. I enjoyed what I was doing. Did I love it? It was interesting, but it wasn't aligned with my strengths. And we came into March of 20, and of course we all know the worldwide global pandemic that ensued. So it was right at that point. I was a chair of a business school. And here's an example of competency versus interests and passions. We can all be competent in doing a job. And I was competent in doing a job, highly competent, but it was draining for me. It was not aligned. But I continued, and you get into, as you said earlier, getting into that rut. And it was very much on the administrative side. So we come into the pandemic, and this was kind of the point when it was telling me it's time to leave. Now is the time to make a new change in a new direction. And sometimes there are events like that, external events that cause you to pivot. So that was the time when I knew I needed to leave academia. And this calling, if you will, of my research and past work and in the area of synchronicity, which we'll talk about, that had created this great body of research, but now it was time to enact on that. And so that was kind of the pivot time when I knew in my heart, this is where I need to go. Academia was wonderful, and I love working with students and teaching. But as we always say, there's a chapter that closes and a new chapter opens. So this was the time for me to start a new chapter.
That's it. And I remember you saying to me, part of that was also there was a bit of a wake up call for you, wasn't there, with being one of the early people in your state to get diagnosed with COVID. And you felt so unsupported by your colleagues or the institute. Can you
Yeah,
speak to
and
that?
yes, sure thing. It was I was one of the early, as you said, Shannon, I was very early on in COVID. It was early March. I had been flying back from Florida from working in the coral reefs, and I contracted it on the airplane. And this was before where anyone was wearing masks. It was before things. It was that week that things started to shut down. And we watched schools from the West Coast started to. We're going to go remote. We're going to shut down for a bit, and it kind of migrated across to the East Coast. And I watched them, on real time, my school saying we're going to be closing down for a bit. So came back 5 days later, I had, the symptoms of COVID, talking to doctors. And at the time, they didn't really know all the symptoms yet. And of course, this is before any vaccines. So I got hit pretty hard. 2 weeks of being, isolated, and 2 weeks of having a fever, which is pretty, again, I had, fortunately, knock on wood, I have never had illness like that and hadn't been sick since college of that magnitude. So being there, I think everyone at the time, as you remember, we were all pretty scared. And there was just so much of a level of unknowing and didn't know what the next step was going to be and how hard we were going to be impacted. But I felt that I had worked really, really hard for 20 years in one institution. And it was really interesting, as you said, a wake up call when they were folks there in the administration were only concerned about contact tracing and didn't ever really reach out to, again, how I was feeling. So that at that point, I told myself, I really, going forward, I'm going to work with people. I'm going to work with organizations that have, a strong sense of the humanness and the spiritual aspects of living a mission and working with people who also believe in that same mission. And that was, again, that was probably that pivot point. But it was an incredible feeling of loneliness and an incredible feeling of obviously fear and fear of the future and what was really happening. But it did create clarity for me.
Yeah. Well, at least the clarity came out of it. But I remember at that time with so many people being so afraid, and it shows you at what point that can really override even your own values and morality, because I think for some people they do want to be supportive and caring and have some level of emotional intelligence, but the fear there just caused people to shut away from that completely. Was that part of the experience, or was it also just people genuinely not really caring at all, and then you realize you needed to pivot and go into a different area even for work?
Yeah, and it was and I don't want to throw anyone under the bus or anything under the bus or any institution under the bus, but I did feel the word that came to mind was a soulless institution. The college that I had worked at for 20 years, it just felt that it didn't have a soul, and it was more transactional on the superficial side. And to have invested and sacrificed so many years of my life, which again was willingly, and I enjoyed that, but it felt what was really weird is 20 years in one spot, and the word I comes to mind is just I evaporated, literally. I said I was going to finish my contract in end of June, and it was just poof. But I think the feeling of, again, a lot of the work that I look at is the area of community and belongingness, and again, in this state of individual loneliness, but how we come together as a group to feel belonging and to be part of a community where you do belong, and that was absent at that time.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's hard because it's something that is so fundamental as a human need. Like, we all want to be seen, heard, valued, respected. And yeah, I can imagine that was not pleasant to go through after a significant a number of years being there. And yeah, it led you to your new line of work and what you're doing now, which I guess you would describe as being soulful rather than soulless.
Yeah, that's central to the mission. It's part of the DNA. I will say one thing that's really ironic is that you mentioned my one of my favorite classes that I developed, purpose, meaning, and happiness. So it was after I left one institution, I worked to develop that class and teach that class at the height of the pandemic. I'm teaching a class called Purpose, Meaning, and Happiness. And throughout that academic year, both the fall and the spring semesters, what really came to mind, as you mentioned earlier, Shannon, is belonging. And I think students understood, yeah, part of being, again, happiness is a byproduct of your purpose and meaning. If you focus on being happy, damn it, I'm going to do everything I can just to be happy, that becomes kind of superficial, hedonistic, short term. Yeah, you can make yourself happy for a while, but it's really the byproduct of having a purpose and having meaning. So it was kind of interesting to, during this time when we're isolated and during the pandemic, yet belonging was so central to who we are as humans. And in fact, it's interesting what you talk about belonging. I mean, the dawn of humankind, you know, we survive, and we have to survive physically to be as part of a community. And when we're, looking about early dawn of humans and hunting and gathering, and they had to come communally to survive. And the kiss of death, if you will, or is to be outcast as a member of your group or community, because you can't survive individually. So it's genetically innate in us to belong.
Hmm. Can you tell us a few more of the insights from that course? I think that's really fascinating that you say happiness is a byproduct of purpose and meaning, because I think that's going to be novel for so many people. We often think that happiness is the gig of life, right? Sure, there's suffering and difficulty and pain, but isn't the purpose of our life to be happy? I think a lot of people have that idea about what life is and haven't entertained the idea that that can be the consequence of finding meaning and purpose. So, what are some of the takeaways with meaning and purpose for listeners here?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because when you say purpose, meaning, and happiness as a name of a course, probably 90% of the people or almost 100% of people will kind of fixate on that last word of happiness. Like,
That's
I
it.
want to take I want to have a course that's going to make me happy. And I think that the insight that students, and these were all first year students coming to college during a pandemic, and we were physically in the classroom, 6 foot separation, everyone wearing masks, but they craved to be together and part of this. And I think the piece that in all their writing in the journals and the different assignments that we created, it was when students said in the purpose or service of others and doing things for other people, that reflects back and creates a sense of satisfaction and happiness and kind of validation for who you are as a human. So simple little things like one student talking about going into a store and a woman in front of her had dropped her groceries or had dropped something. And so just that simple act of picking up and helping this elderly woman pick up groceries as the student walked out of the store, felt, wow, that what a great sense of happiness that she derived from that. And I think so often we, and as human beings, we again are to a certain extent selfish people or selfish individuals because we are focusing on survival. The bottom line is how do we survive in life? And if you look at Maslow's, hierarchy of the hierarchy
Needs. Mm.
of needs, exactly. The bottom base level is survival and belonging, water and food and shelter. And so when you go back to the real base level of that, it is what's going to help me to survive. So I think the backstory of having students realize it's not, I'm going to do whatever makes me happy in that time. It's helping and doing things for others, working with others and communicating and being part of a community that then reflects back and on your value and your sense of happiness.
So, did you discover then that in terms of people working out what their purpose is in life, there will always be an element of contribution and being of service if they are seeking something to feel that joy and happiness emerging?
I think so. Yeah, if it's service to others, other people, or a service that you're creating in terms of a physical product or so that is going to be of service to others, there always has to be some sort of support for other people, however that might
Mm.
be.
And then
So
meaning?
the meaning is being able to use the strengths and the aspects of who you are that can create. So purpose is kind of that longer term, that longer focus of this is my purpose. But when you're creating the aspects for purpose, it creates a sense of meaning in your life. And I think it's really important also to think about that people put a lot of pressure. You put a lot of pressure on yourselves to think, what is my purpose? I gotta find my purpose, no matter what. And there's a lot of pressure. And you know what? Purpose can change. I mean, purpose can be a series. I always look at, your life
Yes.
is a book and you have different chapters. Okay. So my purpose at this point in my 30s, in my 40s, and my purpose, again, you have a guiding star and you have a moral compass that you're always going to be thinking this is, going to be my long-term purpose. But purposes can change throughout life. And I think it's really important for people not to put so much pressure on themselves and to beat themselves up because they don't know what their purpose is.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you bring that up. And it's something that I think I had been stuck on for so long. I mean, perhaps you also had this with your students at university, with you're going there thinking, what is my purpose? Maybe they hadn't chosen their major yet. And it adds so much pressure to every decision that you make. And not to mention that then produces anxiety, patterns of overthinking, self doubt. And a lot of it can be followed back to that underlying belief that people might not even realize they have. That is, I have one and only one purpose in life. Somehow I'm supposed to have, there's a calling, there's something that I have that is going to be the defining thing of my life. And I had that belief, I remember myself, for so long. And it felt like I was continuously searching for the right thing and never really fully enjoying anything or enjoying the ride or the experimentation and the exploration because I was constantly seeking the one thing that was supposedly going to make my life make sense and make me happy. Have you come across that before?
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And another thing that you add to that too is comparison. And you compare with other people. Look at this individual. They have an incredible purpose. They're doing so many wonderful things. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I have no idea where to even start. And so
So true.
and we as humans are always comparing. And I think the maybe I said at on the outset is that we're imbued with this incredible strength, an incredible talent. We call it our natural genius. Only you in this world have this unique combination of personality and strengths and interest. Only you. So no one else is going to tell you what that is, or you shouldn't compare your strengths with someone else's. They're very different and can be complementary, but you're unique. And so it's really, I think personally, so vitally important to find who you are and understand who you are and use those strengths and interests to then align with a purpose and meaning.
Yes. Well, let's go into this because this is your work now, right? You consult, you help people get clarity on what to go forward and do with their lives by using this combination of native genius and synchronicity. Can you explain to us what that is and also why it matters?
Yeah, again, back to the comparison side, I always think I need to be like this person, or or Joe or Susie or whoever that might be. And I think the level of empowerment that brings to someone when you understand your strengths. So what I do is I have a series of assessments that I use, and one is based on the Myers-Briggs personality type indicator. Again, that's as your personality, who you are innately. And Carl Jung had developed this and was made more public by um, Myers and Briggs, mother daughter combination, who decided that the public needs to understand this and be able to have this applied to them. So it's who we innately are as our personality, how you take in information, how you make decisions, how you organize your life, how you interact with the world from an energy level. So using that as your basis of a personality, and you develop your personality throughout life, then layer that with an assessment I use called Strength Scope. And Strength Scope addresses your intrinsic motivation of why are your strengths align with the energy and interests that you might have. So it looks at 24 available strengths and gives you your top 7 strengths, and understands when you use those strengths, you viscerally feel excitement and interest if you're being creative, or if you're analyzing, or if you're being, looking at critical thinking types of things, or meeting with people, or developing people, teaching. So it creates this level of energy that you feel, and you're on the right track. This is where you want to focus. But it's not competency based. It's not what you are good or bad at doing. It's basically because we can be good at all 24 available strengths. It's just some will drain us more than others. And the important thing is to find others where that's their strength, that's their interest, and that's their energy developer, and then complement one another.
Yes. I love this Myers-Briggs. Like, I think I discovered it first time when I was about 16 years old, and somebody handed me a book and I was, this is just uncanny. It's like reading exactly like me. Tom and I are actually both the same on this, both ENFPs. Go have a look at it, guys. Honestly, there's a website called 16 Personalities, I think, which I've used. You can
Yeah.
do a free quiz to find out what your type is, and it will give you a whole quite an extensive description, I've got to say. And I think even from that, not even the strength scope that you mentioned, Tom, it said my partner would be a great writer, my sister a great nurse, both of which is what they're actually doing. I think for us it was even public speaking, talking, communicating, that was a big part of it. So I love that you're driving that, or you're using that as a tool to help people, because it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and it's really important too, because a lot of folks say there's no way 4 letters are going to define who I am, and to a certain extent, it's true. But oftentimes, folks may do it, online or a back of a magazine or something, and it really is so important to have consultation for someone to walk you through that. And this is, again, if you read it on the surface, so like no one's going to define me. But then, as you said, Shannon, you understand what drives people, and having a really good basis for someone explaining the detail of how this is and how this works. And oftentimes Myers-Briggs gets a bad rap because it is not fully defined and explained for people. And
Right.
I think that can be, but and it's one of the assessments is again a personality, again a type indicator. Again, preference is where more often than not, this is where you're going to land as a personality.
Yeah. But something that you add in addition to that is this idea of synchronicity. And I want to go into that because I think so many of us have no clue what it is, but we might have experienced it, or we will have experienced it, I think you would say. So, can you tell us what synchronicity actually is?
Yeah. So synchronicity is try to keep it fairly short, but Carl Jung was thinking about this theory of synchronicity back in 1928 when he first kind of started talking about it, but he never published anything. So synchronicity is this point where they're acausal events. It's not a cause and effect. It's something that happens kind of without your prompting. And that comes to you in a way that's communicated of when you're maybe thinking your internal psyche, what you're thinking matches with an external world and it materializes. So to give a really, really very basic example of when you're thinking of someone, again, your internal psyche thinking about, I wonder how Shannon's doing. And lo and behold, a second later, you're texting or calling. And maybe we haven't talked in years. It's been many, many years. It's like, oh, that's so weird. I was just thinking about you and you're calling. So that didn't prompt. I didn't prompt it by calling you first and you're calling me back. It's like, oh my God, I heard from you. Well, Tom, you just left a message for me. No. So there are a multitude of different examples of what you're thinking about. I'm thinking about, I need a certain piece that's vital for my writing or for my music or whatever that might be. And then you look up and there it is, that kind of message that comes to you. So synchronicity, synchro is a meshing together, chronos, the Greek word for time. Effectively, things fall together in time at the right place at that moment at that time. The synchronicity can come in the form of people, symbols, signs, dreams, many ways that this can be communicated. And fourthly, it may or may not, but it may have a point where it can help chart the next step in your life. It could have deep meaning to you, which one person might say, oh, it's just a coincidence. For that individual person in the center of this, it has very, very deep meaning and it communicates in a way of emotions. You feel it. So it's a really important aspect of having not cognitively just say, oh, just, a spurious correlation. It doesn't mean anything. It's just coincidence, random. But having an intuitive sense, I feel that there's something else there that's telling me a message and giving me a sign to go in this direction.
Yeah, well, it was one thing I wanted to ask actually, because before ever hearing of this term synchronicity, I'd heard of coincidences. And it would often be like those moments where you go, oh, that's weird or that's strange. And then you brush it off like, oh, that's just a coincidence. And what is the difference really? Is the idea of coincidence that there's no it's random, it's haphazard, there's no underlying meaning, whereas synchronicity is pointing towards something larger, like more universal, higher power, I don't know, some external energy or force there.
Yeah, the good point. I mean, and it might be there might just be one instant. It's a coincidence. It just happened, right? The thing also to remember is that everything is connected in some way, shape, or form. Be it through particles, matter, energy. Everything is connected. So yeah, there might be a one-off. It's a coincidence. Just so happens, and then there's nothing after that. What I like to talk about and what a lot of synchronicity researchers and followers is like look for patterns. And we as humans are designed to see patterns. From the dawn of time, how where the sun moves and the time to plant and the time to hunt and all these things you're always very, very aware of patterns. So with synchronicity, you might have one instance, oh, that's interesting, it's a coincidence. And then the very next moment or within a short time frame, there's another connecting related event that starts to create a meaning for you and create a sense of a story. Like, this is telling me something. I've just, and I know you have an incredible story that just happened very, very recently that I think does a wonderful job at illustrating, a synchronicity moment.
Yeah,
So it's
and I
and again, it's following that. And so that might be a really good opportunity for you to kind of relay that and basically
yeah,
what I
because
said.
I think I had been quite mm, doubtful, I guess, that there was any underlying meaning or this. I thought I was just construing sort of events in a way that I was making meaning out of it myself rather than it necessarily pointing me towards a path that I could follow that might be good for me. And there's actually been a few things recently, and I spoke about this on a last episode I did called Trust the Process, the Universe Has Your Back with my former spiritual psychotherapist. And I said, what stood out to me, first and foremost, that made me start querying this a little bit more deeply was when I was getting married in April in Bali this year, I started seeing 1111 everywhere. And the first couple of times it happened, I didn't think much of it. And then it kept on happening. Like I kept on looking at my phone randomly at 11:11 to the extent that I even like screenshotted it and I said to my partner, like, what is this? Like, are you noticing these ones everywhere right now? I don't know what it is, but then my interpretation of it was this, we're on the right track. Like our relationship, like this is right. This is a coming together for us. So that got me thinking about these ones. And then I come home and I have an interview out of a random interview that I forgot I even applied for this job. I think they replied to me much later on. And I looked up where the school was on my map from my home, and it was 1 hour and 11 minutes away from my home. So I was like, okay, I've got more ones there. But I wasn't sure. I was like, oh, I don't know if I actually do want to go back into teaching. That kind of feels like a step back for me, but I'm going to go anyway and see what comes of it. So then I go on the train from my home up to this school in Geneva in Switzerland, and I'm reading a book. And I had been thinking about not wanting to teach, but wanting to teach public speaking. Again, wasn't sure of it, but left it there and thought, maybe I could suggest something about public speaking workshops. So I'm sitting on the train reading this book and I turn the page. It was not even talking about public speaking. And then the words there at the top of the page were public speaking. And at that moment, the train had pulled into a stop in Lausanne, close to about midway point between where we live. A guy got on the train, walked up the stairs, and his t-shirt read, "Trust your instincts." And that was at the exact, oh, I just got chills. And it was literally at that moment that he walked past me. It said, "Trust your instincts." I saw the public speaking on my book, and I had exactly what I just had then, those chills. And it was all of these things somehow coming together that made me go, oh, there's something in that. I don't know what it is, but it just feels like a little bit more than a coincidence. And more than that, and I think you'll point to the importance of this too, Tom, is I felt a huge surge of energy. Like I just felt so alive and really lit up to the extent that I think the guy on the train opposite me must be like, what has she taken? Because she's on some kind of like happy trip right now. But I was like, yes, fueled with energy, lit up, excited, and ready to take action. Is this a synchronicity moment, Tom?
I would say absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the incredible products or one of the incredible outcomes is the energy you felt. It wasn't like, yeah, coincidence, one after another. Yeah, okay. It basically it is communicating to you. And what a wonderful way that we can feel, viscerally feel and emotionally feel that we're on the right track. And at the very least, you follow this and taking your strengths and your interest in public speaking and writing and teaching that has started to connect with the messages of public speaking and the numerology of the ones and all these things happening, these examples, it's communicating something to you. So you follow it. And if follow down a path that's going to take you, and it might take you to a path that is not exactly right, but then, again, you're going to get more messages and more new insights and new synchronicity events.
Yeah. So it is the part of like not having one defining lifelong purpose, but that we can have nudges that guide us onto a certain path in life that then take us somewhere else. And that's part of following the flow. And like what you said at the beginning, not feeling like you're pushing upstream,
Yeah.
like you're going
Yeah.
against the current, against the flow of your life. Like somehow beneath it all, there is a flow there. And we just need to tune into that and start paying closer attention to the subtleties.
Yeah, and we don't trust. Sometimes we don't trust ourselves, and we don't trust. Is this the right thing? But I
Yeah.
intuitively feel it. Oh, I gotta think about it. Gotta analyze it. And usually in the end, we have to. You trust your instinct first, but it's going to take you on that path, and you're on the right path. Now, conversely, in my research, it can be the opposite. You can keep getting red light after red light, red after red light. And I remember one example of my participants in the research was in a job that she really did not enjoy. It was a kind of a great job, but there were so many things that just weren't working in terms of her job and the personnel and her boss. So she began to look for other opportunities and interview for another position. And lo and behold, she got this incredible job offer. It was everything that she wanted. It was, perfect. Again, the responsibilities and the money and where she wanted to go. But something inside just kept telling her it just doesn't feel right. And what's hard is that your external pressures of all her friends and other colleagues were saying, "Oh my God, this is a dream job for you. This is perfect." She didn't feel it. So ultimately, she decided I need to decline this offer. Just something was not right. And then back at her home office, as soon as she made that decision, there was a change in personnel and her boss moved on or something. So then it did create that perfect job for her where she was,
Opening for her.
yeah, yeah. But she felt everyone's telling you this is great, this is great. It just doesn't, she really had to trust, and she did trust that intuition and that gut.
Yeah, let's break this down a little more because I know that I have struggled with this and I have no doubt that so many other people do as well. And that is knowing how to listen to your intuition or what's going on inside your body, your feelings, your heart, your soul, as such, and not just being totally concentrated in the mind and being logical. Like we need both, but how is it that people can start listening to those intuitions and trusting that if they take that leap, that might pay off?
So often as humans, we are surrounded by noise. Is it, your daily life? It is, your responsibilities, other people you're responsible for. And when you're unable to quiet the mind and kind of be in the moment, and we talk about the here and now and being in the now. So, what's vitally important in order to see synchronicities and in order to see and feel my next step and direction, you have to be able to quiet the mind. And through meditation, through prayer, through a quiet walk alone, or just simply sitting, that it time and time again, that's what you hear is you need to be able to shut out the noise, be present, and listen for the messages and listen for that next step that you need to follow through with. Now, with synchronicity, I can explain all kinds of quantum physics explanations and theories that can help to support it. Does it actually answer that 100%? No, but it does have some support in terms of quantum entanglement and wave particle duality and a number of different quantum physics things that physicists look at and why these experiences and events and people come together. There's also, again, a very strong spiritual piece to it. No matter how you define universe, higher power, God, there is the feeling that you're connected to something larger than yourself. And that, in my personal feeling, it is a benevolent being that wants the very best for you. So when you can tap into that and say, there is something that wants the best life for me, and I can tap into that and listen to what are those messages, and listen to, what are those patterns and events that I need to follow through with. You feel that from an emotional standpoint, and that is they say the God wink or the whisper or the nudge, as you mentioned. You follow that, and sometimes it may feel counterintuitive and cognitively, logically, it doesn't make 100% sense, but it feels right, and I think you need to follow that.
And yet, I know that that is really hard to do in practice, especially when it occurs in those moments, like you say, that don't feel logical. Like you can't add it up. Like somehow you're like, oh, that just doesn't seem to be the next right step. Have you got any stories to tell on that front, or any, I don't know, any clients you've had that maybe at first it didn't feel like that would have been a logical decision and then it somehow worked out?
Yeah, there are examples where I've done some workshops and individuals who were engineers who are kind of thinking about what is this workshop about synchronicity, and this is just a lot of hooah. But what eventually happened was once we started to talk. So what I love to do in my workshops is the first beginning is to find a partner, someone who's near you, whom you don't know, and I give you literally, I time it on my watch, 3 minutes. 3 minutes to find one deep connection that you share. And it's not something like, "Oh, I like to go to the movies, or I like music, or I like pizza," but find something that is a connection, because we're all, as I said, we're all connected. And it's to find that deep connection, or some sort of a connection. So these two engineers, and this was done in France, so overseas, from us, and they both come to find out that they both worked at the same university in Montana, 1 year apart from one another. They both had the same boss. They both were sitting in the same office. So there's that connection that they had both found that. So I think from that they understood there's a little bit more to this understanding and trusting your feelings, than kind of a logical approach. And so I hope that opened up some doors for them.
Yeah, and I can imagine you're not really talking to the crowd that's the most open to these ideas. Very analytical, I would think. You're talking about engineers, or, you know, that I
And
think, yeah.
exactly. And there's a great book. I mean, it goes way back, a little bit back, but Malcolm Gladwell wrote the book called Blink. And that our subconscious mind, our intuitive sense, has the ability to judge and to perceive and to make a somewhat of a decision before our brain can kind of decipher that. So it's that
Yes.
intuitive sense. And again, there's all kinds of the energy and the vibrations and the different energies that people can and things can give off. We pick up on that. And you think about animals, and again, their acute hearing or sense of smell, they have that heightened so much that, again, dogs can smell fear, the pheromones that individual things can give off. So we as humans can pick up on so many more signals than we give ourselves credit for. So I think it's understanding, trust your gut. And so in my work in synchronicity, it leads into a point of the 3 A's of, I said, synchronicity events can happen in patterns. So it's the head, the heart, and the hand. The 3 A's of awareness, awakening, and action. And one is kind of that cognitive awareness or acknowledgement of like, okay, interesting. I'm reading the book and I'm looking at the page numbers as 111. Then the next event can be that heart. So we're calling the head, the heart next. And that heart, or that intuitive gut feeling, is an awakening. You're kind of like, okay, there's something more here. I can feel and emotionally feel there's something more to it. These two events are connected. Thirdly is the hand, and that's action. Now it's telling me I'm going to pursue the opportunity for public speaking. I'm going to start to talk to these people, and these people are going to come into my lives through, a synchronistic approach, that are going to be the right people for me to talk to at that right time. So
Yeah.
as you said earlier, Shannon, okay, you could pass it off as just a coincidence, but if you start to apply these patterns and apply these three A's, or the head, the heart, and hand, that's going to take you down a path that you maybe heretofore hadn't thought about, but it's telling you, you're feeling, because your intuitive sense, it's the right thing to do.
And yeah, I'm thinking, and I've certainly had this myself, but an experience of being so disconnected from my even my own body, my own inner knowing, the whole thing about a gut, because we say you trust your gut, but you do feel it. You feel it in your gut, you feel it in your body. It's very separate to the mind in terms of energy and where how that's resonating with you. But I've lacked trust so much in that I haven't taken action. And I think so many people have that experience of going, well, for one, how do I know that this is actually intuition or a synchronicity moment and this isn't just a random coincidence or fear talking or trauma talking or something else, but actually that is guidance from something benevolent. It is for my greater good, but I just don't trust it and therefore I'm not going to act.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of wonder, there is that risk factor. There is that factor of like, I'm trusting this, I'm going to go with it. What's the downside? Again, it's some of the reading I've done, in my professorship stuff in business, when entrepreneurs are asked what's their greatest fear. Any entrepreneur can be a social entrepreneur, can be a nonprofit or for profit. And entrepreneurs, what's their greatest fear? Do you know what their greatest fear is? Just as
Failure?
failure, right? You think, yeah, I don't want to fail. No, it's regret of not following through on something. My greatest fear
Ooh,
is not making a decision when I should have, and looking at this incredible invention. Like, I had that same idea 10 years ago. And my regret is I should have followed through on that. Now it's a huge success or whatever it is. So it's fear of not making a decision and not following through. Failure is a
that is
byproduct.
so interesting.
Yeah.
Yes. I have literally had that recently. I have
Yeah.
had that exact experience. Like I'm actually now, and it's kind of helpful actually in terms of feeling the push to make a decision, because I think I was getting so caught in my head, overthinking everything, weighing up all of the different possibilities, trying to plan, think, overthink, and not take any action. And then I got to a point where I was like, actually, I'm kind of fed up of this now. Like,
Yeah.
this is doing my head in, realizing I'm just going around in circles actually, and I don't have all the answers. And sometimes those answers only come through taking action rather than staying in analysis paralysis. So
Yes.
I can actually understand that.
And that's what, again, Mel Robbins talks about, is the 5-second rule. And if you can sit and, okay, I need to make this decision, and we can sit forever and perseverate over something and eventually talk ourselves out of it. Oh, I got to call Shannon. Oh, well, I'll wait till tomorrow and do it. She's probably busy. So as Mel says, 5 seconds, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, just do it. Make that decision.
Yeah.
And then Shannon said, "Oh my God, Tom, thank you for. I was just thinking about you. I'm so happy you called." I'm thinking, "Oh no, I don't want to put Shannon out." So it's that 5-second rule. And what's the worst? I mean, you're obviously not going to make a decision of a major life experience or a decision in 5 seconds. But when you're thinking, should I call this person or not? Should I write this article? Should I do this podcast? Just take that first step, and then that adds into, from a physiological standpoint, the reticular activating system, which is that
What's
connection with
that?
the connection with your conscious and your physical being and your spinal cord. So, example, sitting here and I really need to work out. I need to go for a run. I need to go exercise. I need to go, uh, you know, uh, and you can sit there and not do it. But as soon as you stand up and start making that motion, putting on your running shoes, your body and your mind changes. Okay, now I'm in it. Now I'm going to go. Getting up to go to the gym early in the morning. Oh, God, but second you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get out of bed, throw on your workout clothes, and you're in the car driving to the gym. You're like, okay, I'm ready to go. So it's activating your conscious with your physical being. And once, again, then your brain chemistry and your brain synapses and the connections start to change to that activity.
And then it's basically just in simple terms, making sure that we don't waste time talking ourselves out of something. It
Yeah.
makes me think of being like at a diving board, which I'm such a little wimp. I'm so scared of heights, or at least I'm scared of falling. And every time I'm there, like, no, I'm going to beat my fear and I'm going to go through it. And then I get to the end of the diving board. I'm like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
And you're standing there on the edge. And I realize that the longer I stand there, the less likely I am to actually do it. Right. So actually just getting up and probably what you're saying, thanks, Mel Robbins, your 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and go. That is giving you the push that you need and not allowing yourself to talk your way out of it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
again, you don't know how it's all going to unfold, but everything is going to come to help you when you need that. All the resources, all the people, all the things are going to come to help you at that time.
And I can say, even from personal experience, I talk a lot about the starting over that I had with meeting my partner, separating from my narcissistic ex and all of the difficulties that entailed. It was unbelievable the amount of doors that opened at the exact moment I needed them. It just I keep saying it again and again. I wish I wrote a list because I had just so many moments that were like, this is unbelievable. I had my partner, who I now is my now husband. He happened to be going to Australia on a related work trip at the exact moment that I needed help for something and randomly got in contact. Like, how did that even happen? And that ended up being the start of what became our romantic relationship. And doors just kept on opening. And yet, it did also require the courage to start walking. Because I think I look back and I go, there could have been a lot of occasions where I said, oh no, that's not right. Or even with our relationship, like, no, we couldn't see each other for 14 months because of COVID. That would have been a reason many people would have given up on the early stages of a relationship. For sure. If I'd have let my rational mind make the decision there, I probably would have said, yeah, that's not going to work. You also can't even leave the country, because at the time I didn't have sole custody of my son and his passport was in the court and all of these reasons. And yet there was a subtle inner knowing and lots of little signs and little openings that just kept us taking one more step in that direction. And now I'm living here full time. Now we're married. Now I'm so happy that I took that leap. And I think there, I say that as an example because I know how hard it can be to start listening to your gut, especially if you've had moments where you have been taught to distrust it, to not trust yourself. And that certainly happened with me in the context of narcissistic abuse. Absolutely. And yet I'm so glad I did. So I think start listening to those little signs, start connecting, carving out space to be quiet, just like you're saying, Tom, with like, you need to quiet your mind to access that inner knowing, and then take steps forward to act on that and put it into action.
Hmm. Yeah. It was reminded of, I've been using the term green lights for many years now, but Matthew McConaughey and his book that came out 2 years ago, and his whole movement of green lights, follow those green lights.
I
If
haven't
you
heard
want
of
to be,
this. Okay.
you want to be an actor, you want to be a film director, just pick up a phone and start doing it. And his life is a wonderful testament of like, I just feel it. I'm going to go for it. Some of his famous lines in movies kind of came to him at that moment, and that kind of was helping, really define him. So, Green Lights is his book that came out, and it's essentially an autobiography, but it kind of like everything that charted to where he is today and going forward is just following that intuition. You're getting green lights, and you hear this time and time again. You get a green light, go for it. And you know what it's like when you're driving down the road and you get one green light after another. Oh, this is just perfect timing. It's making my day.
Flowing.
Yeah. And then you get a red light.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I need to stop. I maybe need to think. I maybe instead of going straight, maybe taking this right or this left is going to be a new direction I need to assess. But and it goes back, as you mentioned earlier too, Shannon, that flow state. You get into that flow state where everything just kind of seems to work effortlessly. You're probably on the wrong path, and this is what I said in the very beginning too, like when you're feeling that it's drudgery, every step is just so hard and arduous, as opposed to a nice easy path with green lights, and resources and things are coming to you when you need them.
So, what are some of the green lights that we could pay closer attention to? I guess
Um,
that's individual. Of course, people are going to have their own, their, of course. But are there any broad, overarching clues that people could, that have no idea about this, that could start paying closer attention to?
I would love to hear more about, from your listeners, but you have this deep down feeling that I want to pursue some area of interest, be it I want to become a teacher, I want to be a writer, I want to be an artist, I want to, whatever a vocation, whatever an interest might be. Oh, I've been talking about writing this book for years. Take the first step. I guess that's the intuition. It's like, you know what? I'm just going to take this first step. And lo and behold, that things are going to come to help you. You'll know you're on the right path because the resources are going to come to you. If you're going down that
Yes.
path where it's hard. So I would say for taking the first step, whatever that in the back of your mind, whatever that feeling is that you've been talking about for a while or thinking about for a while, just do it.
Yes. I was going to say the same thing, because I think one thing that I've realized that comes up are like, what are the dormant dreams? What are the little visualizations that you have, or you have had regularly over a sustained period of time, that you keep falling back to? Because I know for me, public speaking was one of them. Before I did this podcast, before it is whatever I'm going to do next, I just somehow kept on thinking about speaking. I'd have random dreams or just mind wanderings that ended up going, oh, I could do that. Or I'd go and watch my husband, who is a writer and sometimes does conferences in person, and I'd see him up on stage and there'd be somebody interviewing him. And I would sit there and go, I could do that. Or, oh, I wonder what it'd be like if I was there. And then I felt energized. And I think those are the little moments of the clue, isn't it? Like, oh, and of course that you can listen to that voice that goes, oh, who are you to say that you could do that? Or you don't have the resources, or you don't have the qualifications, or all of those things. But it's not that voice first that you should listen to. It's the voice that is telling you the what and the why, not the how, and seeing how that sits internally. Is that something you'd attest to, Tom?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's just follow it. And again, remember I said regret? The one thing that
Yes.
entrepreneurs think about applying that to your life. Like, oh my gosh, I could be a public speaker. And, now's not the right time. It's not, I don't have the energy, I don't have the time, I can't do it. And you think about in the future and you say to yourself, what would it look like if I didn't follow through in this dream, or I didn't follow through in this inkling or this notion of where I wanted to go? How would I feel if I didn't do it? And
Yes.
that might be a little bit more of a motivation. And it's really following that intrinsic motivation of what is driving you. And
Yes.
it's so important just to take one little baby step. One little step, one step is going to lead to another. And that's just the way to begin. It's not, you're not going to do it overnight. You might, but I mean, you're not going to be, speaking in front of thousands of people, tomorrow. But just again, one little step is going to lead you to that.
Yes. So agreed. And I think something that we don't often give ourselves permission to entertain or ask ourselves enough is, what is the best thing that could happen? Because we often say, what's the worst that can happen? We listen to the noise of fear telling you that it's not going to work out, or all the reasons why you shouldn't do that next thing. But actually thinking about, wow, what could really change in my life if I did take that one next step, that one simple next step in the right direction, and think about the rewards and the way that you might feel from that, and then determine whether you think that that is something that you are motivated to change or try.
Yeah, I like that. You think about the upside, not the downside.
That's
What would
it,
it look?
right? The
What would the upside
positivity.
be? Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
what would be
Yeah.
the we just don't do it enough. So I think, like, looking at the upside and also the reality check of what you're saying with regret. And someone came on my podcast recently and she said, And at first I thought this sounds bloody morbid, but she said she lays down on her bed sometimes, and in the context of a not a meditation practice, but this kind of internal check-in, she would say, if I was to die now or today or tomorrow or whatever, in that context, what do I need to know? And she says somehow zooming out like that and taking stock of my life would always give me an answer that I need, like what is unsaid. Okay, I need to repair that relationship, or what haven't I done? And that is the regret that you're mentioning there. Like, if I step back and I go, what really was holding me back from becoming a public speaker? And I listen to all the fears and the time and the energy and all of that. I would say, if I look at that myself, I probably would regret not giving it a go.
I like that. I like that. I know you may be a bit morbid, but if I were gone tomorrow, what were the things that I have left undone? And
Yeah,
think about what did I not follow through. That's a wonderful. Again,
that's it.
it's
Yeah,
maybe morbid, but I think it's apropos, and it
yeah,
kind of gives a good
yeah.
good insight.
It's quick to cut the noise, I think. What's unsaid, what's undone, and to just get back on track in a quicker way. So I said, you know what, I'm going to give it a go. Let's see.
And I think
Now,
the wonderful thing too is that we're not alone. You have all kinds of other people and all a number of resources, but you're not doing this alone. And people should, remember that there's a lot of support out there. May not know it right now. You may not be able to define who those people are, what that is, but there is support for you to follow
yeah.
through in your dreams.
Exactly. Like, and I just think another idea that resonated with me a lot recently was like, there are so many people that you are going to love, respect, or admire, or enjoy the company of that you have not met yet. You have not met, you haven't had these relationships, and they are coming to you. And I think that's just opens the doors of possibility. Like, you do not have all the answers right now, and you don't need to have all of the answers. You just need to find the courage to take the next step in the right direction, an intentional direction that you want to take, not that society is telling you, not that your mother or your father is telling you that you should or shouldn't do. Like, no, what do you want to do? I think it's, yeah, a reality check.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful mindset. And I love the work that Carol Dweck has done on called growth mindset. And it just as you said it, Shannon, it's not yet. Again, I'm not a great speaker yet.
Yet,
So if you can qualify
exactly.
that, you're not kind of defined and static, but your mind and your growth and your life is always evolving, always growing.
That's it. Great advice. I'm going to move into the final fast few questions now, Tom. And the first thing I wanted to ask is, what advice would you give to somebody right now who is feeling lost and stuck and doesn't know the next step to take?
I would say know yourself better, and that of 8 billion people on this earth, we are all unique. Everyone has a unique strength and a unique talent and unique interest and personality that no one else shares. So the first step is to find out, understand better of all the incredible natural geniuses. Everyone has greatness. No matter who you are, where you are in the world, there's opportunity for greatness. And that's the first step, is to know that you're imbued with these incredible strengths. And now match that with those interests, with that purpose and meaning that we've talked about, and kind of put that into action. So know yourself first. Know that you are great and you are very, very unique and have incredible offerings for the world.
Yeah, so true. So beautifully said as well. I think it's something we don't reflect on enough. And people think, oh, I can't do that because that's been done before, or so and so already does it and they do it much better than me. And all of the reasons why we think that we can't do something. And in reality, no one can do it like you because you are unique. And you have to
Yeah.
understand that and really keep that perspective in mind. Second, one thing that you've spoken about on this podcast is the importance of quietening our mind. And I just wanted to ask whether you have any specific practices that can help people to do that.
Yes, I meditate or in devotional reading every morning, but let's talk about the meditation piece. And it's funny because I recently did a podcast, which is on my website, trysyncimpact.com, where I work with a buddy of mine who does breath work and the breathing aspects of addressing your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the relaxation standpoint. So my practice is definitely breath work and using the breath work to put my mind into a state of being present and then listening and allowing, again, those messages and those nudges and those insights that I, in my own brain, couldn't have figured out. So you're tapping into the subconscious, and then they say the superconscious, which is that level of communication to the universe. But kind of listening, what is the next step that I need to take, and where is the feeling, and what is it showing me?
Yes, lovely. And final question here. What is a last message that you want to leave our listeners with in the context of them finding greater purpose and meaning in their life?
Yeah, I think if we take everything we talked about and pulling it all together, of that you have a natural genius in you, matching that and aligning it with that purpose, putting that out there, allowing the universe, synchronicity, however types of spiritual connection and messages you get. So I would say take all the greatness that you have and you possess and put it into action and know that it's going to take you on the right path. You have to have
Mm,
that belief and that people love to help other people. I mean, bottom line is it makes us obviously as human beings to help others. So once you kind of disclose, I have this kind of dream, I want to be a public speaker. Then people are going to say, "Oh, Shannon, I can put you in touch with so and so." And all these things are going to put. But again, having that regret of never telling anyone anything and just keeping it all inside. So I'd say use your greatness, find your purpose, let it out, and the universe is going to take you in that right direction.
I love that. Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. It's been a true pleasure.
Thank you, Shannon. Nice to be here.